morning. Welcome to the next installment of the Esri Emergency Management webinar series. This is titled Modernize Your Emergency Management Agency with ArcGIS Online. My name is Chris McIntosh. I'm the Emergency Management Industry Manager here at Esri, and I'm accompanied by my colleague Jeff Barani, who is the Emergency Management Technical Manager, and we're really happy to have you with us today. The agenda for today is we're going to talk about the purpose of this webinar series and why the use of location information is prevalent across your agency, especially in the 2015-2016 time. Trends that we're seeing across the emergency management industry globally in the use of location information, and how to overcome some of the challenges that are prevalent in enabling your organization to use location information. We're going to talk about common information products that are available to you for your use, and then we're going to talk about how ArcGIS for emergency management is continuing to evolve and grow and increase its functionality. Finally, we're going to talk about the disaster response program and what's going on with that. It's been a very busy month for the DRP, and then next steps and the scheduling of the next one of these webinars. So the purpose of this webinar series is to provide you, the response community, the emergency management community, updates on using ArcGIS to support emergency management and disaster response operations. We do this so that we have a regular communication mechanism with you. First, we try and do the first Thursday of every month so that you know that it's coming and can accommodate that on your very, very busy schedules. Our next topic will be focusing on the story map journal, which has become a very widely implemented solution for emergency management organizations. So we're going to do a deep dive into that solution next February 4th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. These topics can vary. Please let us know things that you want to hear about, and we will get them on the schedule. We are doing these every month, so there's lots of room to get a topic in the agenda that is of interest to you specifically. We're going to vary from broad subjects like today to very narrow and focused subjects like we are doing next month. We're going to continue to keep you updated on what's going on with the disaster response program. As I said, it's very busy. And also what we're doing to support special events. We learn a lot from those engagements, and we want you to share in those lessons learned. So today's topic, modernizing your emergency management agency with ArcGIS Online. So in emergency management today, the things that we're really focused on using location information for are maintaining that continual situational awareness throughout the life cycle of the year that that is going on. So it's not just response, it's identifying when things are happening, identifying how programs are going, and of course also being able to facilitate effective responses. How are you managing your finite resources? The biggest problem, more wants than have. So you only have so many resources. How are you most effectively employing those resources, both in a response framework, but also employing resources going about the day-to-day operations of your agency? How is facilitating information access to the broader community going? How are the executives accessing information? How are planners accessing information? How's the public accessing information? How are we making that better and easier as technology continues to evolve? And along the same lines, how are we communicating situation? When something happens, how are we getting the word out quickly? How are we getting people on the same page? How are we informing the public of actions that they should be taking? How are we activating our operations center and getting people in safely and effectively? And all of that leads to how are we managing large incidents and events, which are extremely complicated, extremely costly, and have a very important need to most effectively save lives and protect property. How are we getting better at that using location information as a vehicle to make better decisions and more effective responses? there are many, many systems out there. There's many, many, there's lots of information out there that you have access to. That you have information tied up in crisis management systems. You have information tied up in Excel spreadsheets and various databases. How is all that information coming in, and how is GIS influencing how that information gets out to the rest of your organization? How are you managing that information so that the various components of your organization can better manage their assets, their resources, their reporting, and all the other requirements that that they have across the breadth of a emergency management organization and the response community. So one of the ways of doing that is figuring out how that authoritative knowledge is reaching your staff and stakeholders. How are you getting the word out? How are you getting that information that's coming in from one of those other systems and getting it in the hands of a responder, a decision maker, or a planner, or a budgetary officer who needs that information in order to know what to do and know what they need to do? Emergency management organizations have a lot of key business units that they are responsible for. And here's just a generic example of all the business units within an EMA that are affected by this. So, we all know about response, but when you think about the broader community, how is the public information going out? How are you managing grants? And has grants informing mitigation activities, and mitigation activities informing grants? Preparedness. How are plans being developed in a way that location information in the plan is being made available to better facilitate response? So are your hurricane evacuation routes on the East Coast and in the Southeast, for example, being generated in a way that dynamic web-based information can be overlaid on top of that to actually see and execute an evacuation with the plan married to the real-time information? How is training being affected? Are you training to using location information in your response? Are exercises being developed, and is your exercise team able to use that information in order to create exercises that drive this into the actual operation of your organization? Daily operations. How is location information being used to facilitate daily briefings, daily situational awareness, watches and warnings? So all these business units are involved in using location information, not just in the time that an operation center is in an increased state of readiness or activated, but all year long, so that they're more prepared to operationalize that in those periods of activation. So what we're seeing around the world is trends and pressures that EMAs are facing. Redefining situational awareness. We're going to talk a little bit about how the prevalence now of smart devices and the power that the average person has in the palm of their hand every day is changing the way that they look at information. That's also redefining what their demands are for situational awareness. Used to be we had a big common operating picture was the way that we defined situational awareness, and everybody was going to look at something that was literally common. Now, because of the rise of applications and because of the rise of very specific tools that we all have, that's changing the definition of situational awareness into one of more focused applications for people who know how to use technology but maybe don't know how to use the entire GIS platform. So a focused application for a person who's filling a specific role, a specific function, and doing a specific task. And that application is very different than somebody in a different role and a different function, yet they're still able to share information. So those mission-focused applications are changing the way we think about situational awareness. It's also allowing a change in the way that decisions are being made. Decisions are now able to be made based on data primarily, and not so much on intuition. if we get those tools in the right people's hands, and they show the right information in the right context, it provides better data-driven decision making. And because of this rise in the use of powerful technology in everyday life, data-driven decisions are becoming more and more necessary. And for example, if I'm driving from here in my office to somewhere in Los Angeles, I use an application to tell me how to get there. And I trust that application, and I follow the directions of that application. It's providing me good data on the right route, whether or not there are tolls, what the traffic's like. And now in this era, I believe in it and almost blindly follow what that application says. That's different than people maybe 5 years ago were saying, I know the best way to get there, and I'm just going to do it on my own. So that belief and using it to drive decisions is becoming the way that we exist now, and that is now moving into the emergency management discipline almost intuitively. And then funding, and it's a little different different element than the other three. It's not so much response oriented, but it's what goes on the other 11 months of the year. How are we making sure that funding, whether it be grant funding or budgetary funding or general fund funding, is going to places with the greatest risk? And we're seeing this happening from national government levels in the United States. This is things like THIRAs that are being implemented to drive risk-driven fundings, putting the money where the risk scores are the highest. And that is inherently a geospatial problem, and it's also an inherently geospatial solution. So ensuring that in an area with the right risk assessment, whether it's natural or man-made or other, is getting the resources that they require in order to buy down that risk, and then tracking how that risk is being mitigated. That is becoming an increasingly important workflow as funding streams are maybe becoming a little bit tighter. So we're seeing that as a really rising trend in the use of location-based information. Done properly and done across your entire enterprise, what that allows for is the ability to use the tools that we're familiar with, whether it's a platform or whether it's an application or a device, and use them for professional purposes. Here we have an example of one of our colleagues from the great state of Kentucky doing damage assessment during the capstone exercise using an iPad, an app a tool that we're familiar with, an interface that we're familiar with, but he's using it for professional purposes. This rise of technology and the use of technology in the hands of our responders is really changing the way that the tools that we all provide as a GIS community are being implemented and operationalized in the field. So what this allows us to do is empower our staff and our stakeholders across the entire organization to discover, use, make, share maps from any device, anywhere, anytime. So we now have the ability to use applications to gain situational awareness in the field, provide information back into the organization's enterprise. We have the ability to get information out to people in a dynamic fashion. So across the response, whether it's field responders, EOC responders, support staff, you can get information to them in real time, get information to them, and briefings, for example, now can be done across different locations and different places. Shared situational awareness is available across different locations and different organizations. Very important that this has changed the way that we're doing things, and it doesn't force everybody to necessarily get in the same conference room like they used to have to. If you think about how this affects the operations of your organization, things like how do we talk about whether or not to activate our EOC at 2 o'clock in the morning? How do we brief the governor or the mayor or the city council? Things like that are fundamentally changing because of this ability to empower staff and stakeholders to share information. And the way that that works is kind of a playbook that we develop here. And the first thing is systems. There's lots of systems that are out there that have a piece of the puzzle. You have information tied up in crisis management systems, you have information tied up in databases, you have information tied up in all kinds of things, CAD and 311, other business systems. How do you bring that information together into one place where you can work with it, where you can combine it, and where you can package it so that it empowers good decision making, instead of having to hop around from system to system and try and put the pieces together in your mind. So you get all the information into one place, and then you can perform analysis. And the analysis allows you to take that information and reveal patterns and trends that bring new understanding. One of the examples that I've seen is if I have a large hazmat incident up on Interstate 10 in Southern California, who cares? But if I have a large hazmat incident up on Interstate 10 in Southern California that's releasing a certain agent within 2 miles of a school, hospital, or daycare center, now I care. So it's, what does the information mean? How do I provide context? How do I marry dynamic web-based information with infrastructure layers or demographics or weather? How do I pull all that together to give me a picture of how bad is bad? And this is an impact summary map. This is one of the solutions that's out there. We had an earthquake here yesterday in Southern California. But this allows you to show, in this case, Napa, how many people are affected, what's in the affected area, how many people were, what facilities were in the area of the worst shaking. So marrying that information together allows that data that's coming from the various business systems and give it context so that we can use it to make effective decisions. So once you do that, once you've performed that analysis, the next thing is you have to share it. How do you share that information and get it out to people who need it? Because if the information in a vacuum isn't useful, it's the old analogy: the tree falls in the forest and nobody hears it. So being able to share that information across organizations, across agencies, across divisions, across departments, and in some places across nations is critical to effective response and good decision making. The construct in ArcGIS that allows this to happen is the web map construct, and you're going to hear Jeff talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. The example you're seeing here from Capstone, 450 counties were able to share information during that event across 8 states. Hugely important for a scenario that's multi-jurisdictional in nature. So performing that analysis and getting it out to other people who need it is a critical function. But once you get the information out, you have to make sure that the right people can get it. And in the opposite of that is you don't want some people to see it. So how do you access information? How do you take that authoritative information, those products, those information products that you've created and shared, and make sure that they're getting into the hands of the right people? So access involves making sure that the right person with the right credentials and the right role sees the information, but also that the wrong people don't see the information. And a fantastic example of how this worked on a tactical level, Esri, in partnership with Henrico County, has supported several of the NASCAR races at the Richmond International Raceway. At those kind of events, you have fire folks, you have emergency management people, you have law enforcement people, you have emergency medical services people, all with their roles and responsibilities. They need to share some information with each other, but not all information. And for law enforcement, there might be sensitive information that they don't necessarily need to share with the medical people. Access controls and the named users that go along with that allow you to really closely control who gets to see what, and also to change who sees what as situations evolve. So we get a lot of questions about the named user construct within ArcGIS, and that's why that is so important, is to facilitate that individual level access control for authoritative information. And finally, once you've got all that in place, how do you find information? How do you know it's out there? And how do you make sure that people can find it and locate your very comprehensive information products? So you provide a platform, a destination where people go to find maps and authoritative information. This is an example of FEMA's Geo platform, which is a very good example of a way to do that. And they've broken information down by hazard. So if you're interested in dealing with floods, or apparently in California now we have a tornado problem, you go there, you find information. If you have the right access, you can get to that information and use it within your organization. So systems analysis, sharing, collaboration, access, and discovery. Those are very important steps to building and employing the location platform across an organization, and we're going to show you a little bit how to do that. Done well, this is what it can look like. And the Central U.S. Earthquake Consortium has done an amazing job of pulling those steps together into a capability that's second to none. Working with one of our partners, G&H International, who laid a great framework with these organizations in policy and governance and standard operating procedures, they were able to share and are able to share information across a previously unrealized and impossible area of geography with so many jurisdictions, so many political boundaries, and they've triumphed over that by following this recipe for implementing a good location platform. This is an example that's being emulated around the world, and if there's anybody on the call from the QSEC area, we can't give you enough kudos for what you've accomplished. And we know you're being tested now with the flooding situation in the Midwest. So to implement this entire location platform, just to kind of recap, how do you provide the mapping analysis, the data, the collaboration across an integrated WebGIS platform? And this WebGIS platform concept is really important because this is why this is now possible. You empower all your users to discover, use, make, and share maps. You location enable it. You allow them to manage assets, collect and organize and exchange data. They can then take that and do planning and analysis to transform that into information. And there is a difference between data and actionable information. Get that information out to the field of the people who need it quickly and in real time or near real time, providing them operational awareness and the ability to disseminate information to when and where it's needed. And finally, and most importantly, and this is often forgotten about, getting feedback from those users in order to make better informed decisions about how to evolve this going forward. So that loop is really, really critical. Now at Esri, what we've done in order to speed up the way that location platforms can be enabled and implemented is we have this key principle of Agile Methodology. And that Agile Methodology is the ability to deliver immediate value to your organization. And sometimes that's a matter of minutes. A situation may occur that you didn't necessarily pre-plan for. So the flexibility that is now available allows you to deliver an application or a mapping product or an information product very quickly, even if it needs to be built on the fly. And that's utilizing this process of configure first, customize second. Use ready-to-use applications, maps, and data that you have access to, and configure them to support your needs. And only if you cannot support your needs with configuration, then move to customization. Customization has a logistics trail that you may not want to get involved with, and as we deliver and provide more and more solutions, more and more applications, more and more templates, the ability to configure those for your needs is going to becoming more and more prevalent. There's also flexibility in the way you deploy location platforms. And the three versions that we most often see are a completely on-premises version. That's the servers, desktop inside your building completely. And that's if you have a need for high security or your mission prohibits you from being in a more collaborative environment. That's one extreme. The other extreme is a completely software as a service deployment, all in the cloud. What we're increasingly seeing is a hybrid, and this kind of allows you to scratch both sides of that itch, and that's this middle version where you have a combination of on-premises infrastructure and you're utilizing the cloud capabilities of ArcGIS Online and also managed services, so that you can configure your architecture in the way that provides security and redundancy as you may need it, but also allows you to be open and collaborative with other partners outside of your organization. But you have flexibility in the way that you put this together. So you have a lot of choices that you can make, and it can be rather overwhelming. We see in many places on how to pull all these parts and pieces in the way that best fit your requirements and needs. And this slide I love because it kind of shows how complex things are. To perform this enterprise integration, you have so many different things that you're trying to integrate and display and analyze and enrich from many sources: social media, spatial data, big data, web services, images, sensor networks, local data, other agencies' data, national data, private sector data. It's all out there, and you're trying to bring it all together in order to create these information products that will inform data-driven decision making. And it can be a big task if you look at it this way. But this is where the maps and apps for everyone come into play. Is you're able to take all of this enterprise integration, and once you get it into our location platform, you're able to deliver it on a map or an application that's ready to use and works on any device, anywhere, anytime, using mobile, web, desktop applications, pull in demographic information, use the various base maps that are available, connect to partners and connect to other live information sources, traffic, and put it on a device that is easy for someone to use. And we kind of use this rule of 3 clicks. We want to put an application in the hands of a responder or a user where they can get what they need in 3 clicks or less. So taking this very robust and complex enterprise integration and boiling it down to 3 clicks in the hands of a user. Next slide, Jeff. And this is what that looks like. These applications, again, you are already available. They're able to be downloaded, configured first, and put in people's hands. Any device, anywhere, anytime. And there is a ecosystem to help you successfully do this. And many of you don't know that this environment is out there. At Esri, we have teams of people who are ready to help you do this, and they range from technical advisors. We have consultants who can provide you very quick jump starts or You'll hear about platform launch support services. Training is available, premium support, which is often used to handle major problems or critical problems like during a response. And then there's just things like this, talking to you from our various industry teams to let you know what's happening in the community, what's happening with our software, and what the trends and things that we're seeing becoming more prevalent. Now, we've talked a lot about applications and templates that are available to you. There's a lot of them. Many possible information products for emergency management. And often when we talk to people about what they want to do, it's overwhelming. There's so many things I can do. What should I do? And we recognize that. I think that we've identified over 40 different solutions and applications and templates that have a application to emergency management. There's hundreds and hundreds of information products that are out there. So even though we provide them all in one place, and you can see the link to where you can go find them all there, what we've done is we've boiled those down into an initial operating capability. An initial operating capability for emergency management. This is where we think, based upon what we see and we know, is a good place to start. We're trying to enable people to make better decisions, and by empowering them with the common information products that we're seeing get fielded, and the common business groups within emergency management agencies that we're seeing them fielded in, this initial operating capability takes all of that we've spent the last 30 minutes talking about and boils it down to this. And this is what an architecture for enabling your emergency management organization with modern GIS looks like, and the information products that we feel are most important to deploy and implement to get started, and make this as simple as we can for folks to begin to implement the location platform across their organization. And now Jeff is going to actually talk about some of these information products in detail and walk you through what they can be used for and what it takes to put them together.
Great, thanks, Chris. Happy New Year, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. So, we learned a lot of things that kind of set the stage for kind of getting us started, and what do we want to look at in terms of a couple of information products to get started with when thinking about, implementing a modern system to support the needs of your emergency management agency. And the first information product that we want to talk about here is an overview of hazards briefing book. So there's a lot of great information that's tied up in your hazard mitigation plans, maybe as paper maps or maps on the wall, and this is a great way to operationalize some of that information. Put it inside of a story map journal so we can always have quick access to common hazard maps of various types, whether that's earthquakes or hailstorms or the status of county hazard mitigation plans or the historic disaster declaration status like we're looking at here. So this is one example of just putting that information together and making it accessible throughout your organization for decision-making purposes. From a preparedness perspective, we've seen a lot of great success of taking our solution template for special events and operationalizing that for your organization. If you've got a road race, a presidential convention, or whatever the case may be, whether large or small, starting to take some of that information that may be in the incident action plan and put that together in a map, and then put that together in a web map and operationalizing that through the platform. So that's another kind of great way to start. Special events, often happen, many times throughout, and maybe even more often than disasters, and it's a great way to start to operationalize that information that may be tied up from a planning perspective in an operational context. And we've got a solution template there to help you get started, and this is one of the areas that we'll get continued work on over the course of the year from our folks in the solutions division here at Esri. Another key, information product that we see is what we call a watch officer dashboard. So from a daily operations perspective, what do you want to have in your emergency operations center or for your watch officers, even when your EOC may be empty, to kind of show the current status of events, whether that's weather type of events like earthquakes or wildfires or tornadoes, that type of thing. And then have that wired with information, ready to go in case a disaster strikes, with some of data for incidents, operations, and roadblocks, that type of thing. So we, in one of our recent webcasts, we talked about how to configure, leverage some of the live feeds that are out there and available inside the operations dashboard. So we'll send this link to you in the after the webcast, and laser you into some of these key resources to help you get started with some of the information products here. And our recent webcast kind of went through how to configure this particular application. As Chris mentioned, the web map is really critical and central to a lot of the things that we put together, and then can be configured in many apps. So we saw a lot of situational awareness information in the Watch Officer dashboard. We can use that same web map and create different versions of that for briefing purposes using the story map journal. So if you want to present with an easy way to see what's going on in the jurisdiction, either during way to organize those web maps and apps in an easy-to-use way that decision makers can take with them throughout their journeys throughout the day. And we'll get into more details on this specific application in our webinar next month, and communicating more effectively with the story map journal, both for daily operations as we're showing here, but also as the overview of hazards that we talked about before are two great examples of using the story map journal to get that information out. So again, this is probably one of the most important applications that we've seen being implemented over the past years. We've observed folks responding to events, and that's really kind of transformational for folks. So this is, again, is one of the key information products that we recommend implementing. Another aspect of the technology in the web maps is to be able to use the presentation mode of the ArcGIS Online web maps, and we'll show you an example of that. Basically have a live running PowerPoint-like application running, but in this case it's using live dynamic information to show the current status, and this can be running unattended at the front of the Emergency Operations Center to give a sense of what are the current weather that may be impacting the area, like storm reports, or highlight different aspects of the incident or the operation, and can be configured to run unattended. So there's kind of three different information products from a situational awareness perspective for daily operations that can be combined together and leverage the same kind of core web map. One of the things that's really kind of transformational is in modernizing your emergency management agency is to think about having a web map that shows the incident information. So when the incident happens and we're kind of in the response mode from a business unit perspective, and we're challenged with maintaining situational awareness and status, the web map is the place to start. How am I going to go in and start to organize all of my information related to the response, whether that's incidents, operations, where am I putting the incident command post, that type of thing. What type of resources are available to the folks that may be affected, like shelters and that type of thing. We can put all that together in an incident web map as you see here, and then start to use that in some of the other applications to help us continue to meet some of the mission demands that we'd have. Another quick starting point and a quick win that we see for folks is using our damage assessment template for initial damage assessment, or the windshield survey. Being able to take that out in the field quickly and quickly inventory the damage in an affected area. This is a topic that we covered during our last webinar. Last month, and we can go into more, so you can view the recording of that webinar and go into more details of configuring this damage assessment template that leverages the collector for ArcGIS and our damage assessment a template. So again, we see this as one of the quick wins for your organization. And then finally, the public information map template to help you share and coordinate information with the public, either whether that be warning information on weather that might affect the jurisdiction, or after an incident happens, what resources are available to the public and what do they need to know about, such as roadblocks or closure areas that they may not be able to get in. So again, a good idea to perhaps have this configured in a steady state, and then for blue sky operations, and then when disaster strikes, you have it ready to go, and folks know where to find this information, like on Facebook or from your Twitter feed or that type of thing. And so we've got a user guide to help you configure this that's available inside of our disaster response application. Or excuse me, and inside of our disaster response org, and we'll have links for those that we share with you. So I've kind of shown this to you in slide form, and I want to do a quick demonstration of each of these as we so you can get a better sense of some of these applications. So what you've heard Chris kind of lay out here today is there's common objectives that many of you are trying to meet for your emergency management agency. And there's certain trends and pressures that are driving change. The modernization of situational awareness, consumerization of IT is changing expectations of folks and how they do things and what they're expecting to see at work. And our platform helps you, overcome some of those common information challenges that Chris talked about, like access and discovery and sharing collaboration. And those are enabled by some of the key enablers of the platform that Chris talked about, whether that's the location platform itself or some of the enterprise integration through the SDKs and APIs and that type of thing. The Esri ecosystem that can help you get started quickly, and maybe have our professional services folks help you out through some platform launch support services to get going with some of these key information products. And so now this is where it all kind of starts. The front page of the portal, whether that's implemented in the cloud, in the public cloud, or on premise, that's kind of the place to start. And we can organize our information in a series of groups to make that easier to find and discover. And there may be many groups inside of your organization. We can organize this. How does this make sense? Like some of the key business units that Chris mentioned before, whether that's daily operations or mitigation or response, that type of thing. And in mitigation, for example, this is where we can start to organize a lot of our hazard information inside of web maps. Do this in new ways, not paper maps, but web maps now, where we can have access to this information, whether that's flood risk or fire threat or to the disaster declaration history. We have some of these web maps organized inside the platform that we can then quickly configure into some of these applications, like this hazard briefing book implemented through the story map journal. And now we can quickly pan through and page through the information here in this story map journal to give a sense of what are some of the hazards that may affect our jurisdiction. And this is interactive. We can drill in and get more details on certain aspects of things like flooding, as we see here. So that's just one example. Next, we want to take a look at what does some of the special events information look like. So this is a web map that's the starting point as the result of using our special events template, where things that we have laid out for, in this case, a race, where the facilities that we're going to provide to the public, like restrooms or first aid stations, or some of the parking areas, that type of thing. Getting this information in a web map first is really important to help to start to convey this information and make it accessible for those inside the organization that need to, and the stakeholders that need access to this. The next web map the next information product that we want to look at here is an example of the Watch Officer dashboard. So in this case, we're looking at different feeds of weather coming in. We've got weather warnings and watches, some of the recent tornado reports and storm reports, as Chris mentioned, and that are impacted California over the past week. The earthquake that happened in Southern California just in this last day. We validated these sets of information products with some of our users, and the things like this Watch Officer dashboard dashboard have resonated really well with the folks that we've worked with and the early implementers of some of these patterns and in technology. So another way of starting to look at some of this information from a situational awareness perspective, and is through things like a briefing product that we're looking at here, and we'll fast forward to some of the key events. So having something like this running unattended at the front of your emergency operations center to cycle through some of the key information that may be important for your jurisdiction, and having people be able to see this all the time instead of having to go to paper maps every operational period to print out or provide access to this information. Also being able to access this in a briefing form, and when an incident occurs, going through and looking at the different aspects of the response, such as transportation, mass care, that type of thing, being able to access this information quickly and timely. And all of this is built upon a common web map that has the core elements that we want to capture and be able to communicate in applications like this, such as operations, shelters, incidents. What are some of the assignments that we're making? We can leverage some of the capabilities of the platform, whether that be ArcGIS for server or the cloud, to host and provide access to this information, and wrap this all up in a common web map that we can then configure inside of applications. And then if we need to make this further available to the public through applications like this public information map template here. And again, like as we've talked about before, also being able to use this for from field mobility purposes. So if we want to do an initial damage assessment for an area, being able to quickly use tools like our smartphone, take advantage of some of the consumerization of IT demands and the smartphone advances in smartphone technology, and leverage those devices and trends to capture that information and bring it back into the EOC for summary and decision making purposes. So that was a quick tour of some of the live versions of these applications that we have available and can be configured. A lot of resources that we mentioned to help you get started with this information. And again, this is the result of thinking about all the different possible information products. What are we hearing from our users and some of their key needs? What were some of the lessons learned that we've heard and observed from our users over the past year or two, and having them watching them respond to disasters, and what really resonated well in new and kind of transformational ways. And so that we've kind of boiled those list of 100+ information products and 40+ solution templates down into this list, and what we're recommending to get started with from what we've seen from our users. And again, just to reiterate, the web map is really the transformational kind of component that makes this happen. Organizing the information inside of the web map, whether that's coming from your organization or from map services or just general services from other agencies, and being able to tie that together, that becomes the new paradigm or the new medium to then configure these variety of applications that come with the platform, so you can be off and running to meet your mission needs much faster than you've been able to do before. So what we always do in these webcasts is we have a couple of standing topics that we wanted to hit, and we wanted to provide a couple of key updates for our ArcGIS for Emergency Management solution templates from our colleagues in that part of the company. A couple of key things to note that are new recently. One, over the past couple of months, you may have seen that there's a new set of situational awareness templates that have come out and are available, and there's been some recent updates that have been made to these. Specifically, the situational awareness widget that comes with the web application builder has been added to the developer edition now. There's also this past release been some minor enhancements made to the crowdsource manager and the crowdsource reporter template to keep that current and fresh. As we've communicated before, over this course of the year, you'll see new templates for hazard mitigation that will come out from this team, and specific updates planned for special events. Also, they have a service catalog if you want to use that as a reference to configure your organization really quickly. There's a service catalog that they can provide to help you get things going, like incidents, operations, special events, damage assessment, that type of thing. So look for more continued communication over the course of the year from updates from the ArcGIS for Emergency Management team. As Chris mentioned, it's certainly been a very busy month from a disaster perspective. Unfortunately, a lot of flooding in the Midwest. We had some tornadoes in the Southeast over Christmas. A lot of activity, over the past month, unfortunately. And as we curate good examples of people putting the platform in action into this group here and through the disaster response program. So I've added 5 new entries to this collection this month, and I'm going to show you examples of these, and you'll have links to these after the webcast. And so again, this is something that we want to continually highlight. And then also just note that through our disaster response program, we're here to help, and there's a link if you need assistance responding to the current flooding, whether that's additional software or premium tech support or specific workflow advice. So there's different ways that the Esri disaster response program can help you. But let me take a minute here and break out and show you some of the examples of some of the recent information products. So again, through our disaster response program site, we've got an examples group where we're listing out some of these recent examples. And the first one that I wanted to highlight here is from the Missouri Emergency Management Agency, their state emergency management agency, and they're taking the concepts of the incident map and putting this in action. And so here in their event viewer app, we can see some of the recent information that's out there and accessible from for the flooding. We see some of the flooding extent collected by NGA and delivered through FEMA, where some of the levees are, and they've done a good job of organizing some of the recent incident information that's out there and available in this incident map. So here we're seeing again this information in action and operationalizing a lot of this information. This can then be further configured in various applications like the public information map or the operations dashboard to provide additional value to laser in on some of the key information. But a lot of these are public information sources that are out there and available, again, if others need access to this for their current response. Here we see an example of FEMA using the Story Map Journal to convey information about the current central U.S. flooding. Here we see different live feeds of information like stream gauge information, current accumulated precipitation coming in from FEMA and some of the available information there, some of the Civil Air Patrol photos that have started to come in that start to convey the magnitude of the flooding, and by clicking on any of these points we can get some context to the situation, look at the photo that's associated with these Civil Air Patrol points, what's the declaration status. So again, using the Story Map Journal as a way for briefing purposes to actually convey a lot of information that's tied up in various web maps and applications, and presenting this in a really kind of easy to use way. So again, another kind of public example of information that's out there and available. This was forwarded to me last night from the Illinois Department of Transportation, and their use of the Story Map Tour to index photos that have been taken from airplanes and giving context where those are taken on the map through a Story Map tool. So again, recent information from just a couple of days ago is now accessible in this environment to be able to see this type of information and make this available quickly. Another example that I wanted to show here is from San Diego County, and I picked this up actually from their Facebook page, and they're using the configuration of the public information map template exactly how we envisioned, to provide current situational awareness information to the public on where there's current precipitation, where that precipitation may intersect with things like wildfires that can present serious problems in this El Nino year, that type of thing. So a great use by the San Diego County Emergency Management Agency to put this information out and make it accessible to the public. And finally, our last example that we wanted to show this month comes from the City of Seattle. And here, in a public example, they've made available some of their hazard information directly to the public to help educate them on some of the risks that they may face from various hazards, whether that be earthquakes or where you're in, a tsunami inundation zone, or what the liquefaction risk is, where, landslides may have occurred, or what's your risk for flooding. So again, using the platform to operationalize some of this key hazard information and get it out there and accessible to the public. So again, these are all, great user examples that we've seen of implementing some of the key information products that we see to get started quickly for modern, applications and modern to really help modernize your emergency management agency and help to get out information out there quickly. So, Chris, anything else you wanted to say about the recent disasters or any of these examples?
These are all fantastic examples of things that people are doing in response. I want to refocus your attention at the link at the bottom of this page. If something happens in your area and you need help, please ask us for assistance using this link, and we have a team of people who is standing by ready to assist, and Brenda Martinez from our team is on call 24/7 to answer those requests for assistance. So there's a lot of activity right now, and as we proceed through the winter weather and El Nino, there's going to be a lot more. So please take that, get that link, bookmark it, and use it if you need it. So the next steps following this call, please take a look at the resources that were presented in the webinar. There's a lot there. If you have any questions, please let Jeff or I know. There's a new landing page for smart emergency management available at Esri.com. Take a look at that. Now, this is designed right now for small emergency management organizations that have limited resources and limited staff. However, we are going to be growing this into initial operating capabilities for larger emergency management organizations that maybe have a little more robust requirements and responsibilities. But take a look at that, and you'll see a lot of this information summarized. Next webinar is Thursday, February 4th. We're going to talk about the story map journal, as Jeff said. We got a couple questions, Jeff, that if you could answer. One of the big ones is there any templates for how to organize base data for curation and population of various applications and templates?
In terms of base data, there's an information model that's put together by our solutions folks that has a lot of details from a base data perspective, whether that's critical infrastructure or parcels or transportation infrastructure. We didn't really kind of focus that in today's webinar, but the information model that's provided both at the kind of the local and the state level really covers a lot of the aspects of some organizing some of your base data, and that will continue to evolve to focus more on from an emergency management perspective to help communicate things like the status of bridges, status of power outages, that type of thing. So check out the local government information model.
Another question is, what are we doing with 3D in more applications and templates going into 2016?
Obviously, a lot of work has been put into 3D over 2015 by the software development team. Enhancements to the web APIs to be able to deal with some of the 3D data, and that's just starting to come out now. The new ArcGIS for Earth product is a way to visualize that information. ArcGIS Pro has both a 2D and 3D environment, and the server technology will continue to evolve to be able to serve and provide that 3D information in efficient ways. So a lot of not something that we've emphasized here in terms of the initial operating capability, but some of the additional information products, and that will continue to get added to over the course of the year.
One thing we had a question is assistance for the disaster response program confined to the U.S. No, we provide and offer assistance for disasters worldwide. So I want to make sure everybody was aware of that. Please let Jeff or I know if you have any any other questions that we didn't answer during this webinar, or if you have any ideas for future webinars or things that you would like to see us focus on. We thank you very much for your time. Please stay safe and let us know if you need any help. Thank you.